In this video, we're talking about how Xbox is trying to force PlayStation exclusives to run on their next console, but here's how Sony can block it. Then we're going to talk about how the PS5 Pro's generational upgrade is about to get even better. And finally, we are going back to Greece in God of War. I cannot believe it. How's it going, everyone? As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. This is PSReady, my channel all about PlayStation. I hope you had a great weekend playing video games. I played a lot of Far Cry 5. That game is awesome on PS5 Pro. I tried it on PS5 when they put out the 60 FPS update, and there were some weird stutters once in a while that would cause screen tearing because I guess VSync isn't on. Those are just gone in the PS5 Pro version. Runs at a native 4K. It's a cool open world game set in Montana. I've been watching Yellowstone. I just finished it. I'm so depressed, but if you're into that show, it's kind of like the Cow Police Simulator. It's like Casey Simulator. I really like it. But let's jump into this first news story here because it's really interesting. So this is all coming from a leaked image from Microsoft, where they're talking about reaching 1 billion gamers, and they've got the whole spread of all the different Xbox machines like the ROG Ally, the Series X, the Series S, some Windows PCs. And if you look really close at the new Xbox app that is being featured in the screenshot, there's a little tab for Steam on that list. So as someone who has a channel all about the Steam Deck, I am very familiar with PC gaming. I split my time 50-50 between PS5 and PC, mostly like a multiplayer first-person shooters. That's for PC. A lot of the open world single player stuff, that's for console. It's basically if I want to play a game at my desk, PC. If I want to play it on the couch, console. But I know a lot about this, and I think a lot of the industry people who were talking about this were misreading that image, which is kind of annoying. So the way people were initially reading it, mainly because the Xbox consoles were in that picture, is that the new operating system update that they're going to get eventually will allow you to play Steam games on the Xbox machine. That almost 99% can't happen. They run in a completely different environment than what Windows uses. It's not like a little PC in the sense of software. It's a little PC in the sense of hardware. So it's not like the Series X and S can just get an update tomorrow that completely changes their operating system, allows you to play Steam games, which would in turn allow you to play PS5 exclusives like Ghost of Tsushima, The Last of Us Part 1, The Last of Us Part 2, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, the big first party stuff that has come over to PC around a year or so after it came out on PS5. That is just not happening. It might happen down the line with their next gen console if it does transition to being a Windows PC with a flavor on top of it that looks and feels like the Xbox operating system, but there's no reality where the Xbox Series X and S are going to get access to Steam games. But in the future, when they release their next console, I'm putting that in air quotes because it's not really going to be a console, it's going to be a PC. If you've ever used the Steam Deck, it's going to be very similar to that, where the Steam Deck runs a Linux operating system. It has two modes. It has game mode and desktop mode. If you go into desktop mode, it's just a regular old PC. You can open up Steam like you would on a Windows PC. You can use it with a mouse and keyboard. You can plug it into a dock and use a monitor. You could use it like a PC. But if you go into game mode, it's running Steam technically in its big picture mode, which is if you go into that on your PC, you can navigate it with a controller. It's like a console style operating system for your TV. So that's what they're trying to do with their new Xbox that's coming out in 2027. I'd imagine that when that thing boots up, it'll go into their version of big picture. So the Xbox app will be in TV mode. So it'll feel like you're gaming on a console, but it's not really going to play Xbox games at first. It'll probably just play PC games, which is where Steam comes in. So another thing they're trying to take or copy from Valve is Proton. I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty on what that is. Basically, it's an emulation layer that allows you to run Windows games on Linux. They want to do that with Xbox games. So all Windows PCs will be able to play the entire Xbox library. So 360, Xbox original games, Xbox One games, those will work on PC through emulation. It'll create a little install that tricks the game into thinking it's running on Windows, and then they'll have their whole library on PC. So in theory will be an Xbox console, but also a PC. But for now, that screenshot is basically signifying that the Xbox app is going to get an update and it'll scan your SSD. And if you have Steam games installed, you'll be able to launch them from the Xbox app. Good luck with that. That app is terrible. Every time they update it, it gets marginally better, but it's still nowhere close to even, I would say, what the Epic Game Store could do. And a lot of people on PC refuse to interact with the Epic Game Store, to the point where if a game is out on Epic for a year first, people call the Steam launch a year later its official launch on PC. That's how much people hate the Epic Game Store. So yeah, if you can't get to at least as good as Steam, that's the best shot you would have at even taking some users from it, but I just don't see it happening. I think Steam is just going to continue to be dominant on PC, but the interesting door that opens is that a lot of Sony games, like I already said, are on Steam. So if you're putting them through the Xbox app, that's going to make it so the next Xbox console can play PlayStation 5 exclusives. And people were saying that Sony can't block this. But again, as someone who has a lot of knowledge about this from my Steam Deck channel, you can 100% block devices from accessing games because it happens all the time on the Steam Deck. Any game that has multiplayer, like Destiny 2, Call of Duty, they use anti-cheat in these games that doesn't work on Linux. So if you try to boot these games up, you can boot them up, but you'll get to the menu and the game will be non-functional. Every big multiplayer game pretty much behaves like that, outside of a fair few that run on the Steam Deck and work well. That specific strategy wouldn't work, and that specific strategy, I want to be clear, would not work in this scenario because it's not the multiplayer you're trying to block. You're trying to block specific hardware from accessing the game. I just wanted to prove that a lot of people are saying that it can't be done, but it has been done with both Steam Deck and GeForce Now. Steam has been blocking access to games left and right, and Sony has an easy way to do this. So if they're putting out an Xbox branded PC that is a console, they're all going to use the same chip, right? Like they're going to come up with some new custom AMD chip, just like they did before, just like Sony does, just like Valve did with the Steam Deck. They're all going to have it. And even if Asus or Lenovo or whoever else come out with their own Xbox branded PC, handheld, whatever you want to have out there, they're probably going to use the same chip too, because that's what's happening with the handhelds with Windows right now. The ROG Ally, the Legion Go S, they all basically use the same AMD chip. So all Sony has to do is say, if you have this chip running your PC, you can't play the game. They just put a lock on there, a hardware lock on the EXE, you're done. You just say that hardware can't play this game even if you download it from Steam. A lot of people are coming out and saying, oh, there's no way they'll go through that effort. Yeah, they will. They're not putting games like Lego Horizon Adventures, which is on Steam and Nintendo Switch, on Xbox for a reason. Even Death Stranding, that had a 5-year exclusivity window on PS5 consoles. They made Hideo Kojima wait till 5 years to the day to even announce that Death Stranding was coming to Xbox. So if they're playing that game with making sure their games don't come to Xbox, where there's not even that many people for it to make a huge dent for them in the first place, you bet your ass they're going to figure out some way to block that hardware from accessing their games. I'm sure people will be able to hack it or figure out a way around that EXE, just like they did with Sony forcing you to log into the PSN for God of War Ragnarok and other games. But like, the amount of people that you would need to do that to actually sell those games on the hardware for it to make sense, it's never going to happen because people don't want to deal with that. The biggest like boon of playing on a console is the convenience factor. The more roadblocks that are in the way to play games, the less enthused people are. It's the same stuff I say all the time. So yeah, if they are releasing a version of Windows that allows you to put it on an Xbox console and it can access your Steam games, I would say I'm 99% sure Sony's going to figure out some way to block it. And that, like, the way I listed would be the easiest way to do it. Just put a hardware block on whatever chip all these devices share. And even if Asus, Lenovo, and Microsoft all come up with different AMD chips to run the console, just block the specific configuration. Just find the brand of the RAM they're using, find the brand of the GPU if they have one. Just figure out what specific hardware combination you need to block, because you can do that. Steam does hardware surveys. They track exactly what hardware configurations are running Steam games at any given time. So it really wouldn't be that hard. They just have to convince Valve, and I'm sure Valve would do it because they let GeForce Now games be blocked and they let anti-cheat ruin games on Steam Deck all the time. But yeah, speaking of the PS5 being awesome, that brings me to the second news story here, which is once again about the PS5 Pro. I talked about Assassin's Creed Shadows in the last video, where Digital Foundry did their video and they said this is like a night and day difference between the PS5 and PS5 Pro. I since went back and read the article on Eurogamer, and they call it a generational upgrade. And when you see the footage side by side, I find it extremely difficult to disagree. Now look, say what you will about Assassin's Creed Shadows not living up to the high watermark of older games in the series like Assassin's Creed 2, Brotherhood, and Black Flag. It does not look like my old favorite Assassin's Creed games, but like the graphics on the PS5 Pro version, they got me to pick this game up, man. Like, it came with my PC for free and I saw the PC port was kind of busted, so I was like, I'm not even going to try it. But just knowing how big of a technical showcase it is on the PS5 Pro, I just want to see those graphics to know that they exist on a console. Like, it's crazy that this console that's only $700 is outperforming PCs with like 4080s in them. Now that says a lot about the PC port itself, but still, it's outperforming PCs with 4080s in them, and that's kind of crazy. So we know it's already great, but it's about to get even better because apparently the upscaler they're using in Assassin's Creed Shadows is not PSSR. Now, at first, the Ubisoft, they were not so good with PSSR. We saw Avatar Frontiers of Pandora come out with its patch, was not great. We saw Star Wars Outlaws come out with its patch, also wasn't great. But both of those games eventually got updates where they moved on to the latest version of PSSR, and then they were great looking games. So I could definitely see this new version of PSSR smartly being the first version that Ubisoft launches into AC Shadows. And when that happens, when they're no longer using FSR to upscale, which is what I'm assuming they're using, I think we're going to get some pretty damn good results out of the PS5 Pro using this homegrown upscaling tech that Sony's developed over the past few years. And the coolest thing is it's going to get even better after that. Like if this game has a long tail like Valhalla did, where it was like a single player live service game that they did seasonal updates on, they released a bunch of DLC just to keep people coming back. If they have enough players, when Sony releases their flavor of FSR 4 for the PS5 Pro next year, I'd assume that Assassin's Creed Shadows will get a patch to include that. So it's already great. It's about to get greater. And then in a year from now, when they can use FSR 4, if people are still playing it and there's enough of them that they need to support, it's going to get even better. So there's 3 levels of great here, and that's awesome. Like, how often does that happen, especially with Ubisoft? It is kind of a bummer that the only time these publishers and developers actually put effort into their games is when they're in dire straits. Like Dragon Age the Veilguard on PC is like one of the only EA releases in a long time to not require the EA launcher. Obviously, that was because they wanted people to have every reason possible to download that game and get the sales up, which didn't really work out, and I don't really care because that game wasn't like for me at all. Assassin's Creed Shadows, same situation, just a lot worse because Ubisoft's entire future is resting on this game, but thankfully it looks like it's selling pretty well. I saw Tom Henderson tweet out that it's on track to have 6 million players by the end of the month. That sounds pretty damn good. I don't know if it's enough to save Ubisoft, but it's in the right direction. And as much as I've kind of fallen off with Ubisoft games over the past few years, I don't actively want any publisher to really fail. It doesn't look bad by any means. It just doesn't look like something I'm super interested in, but maybe it'll hook me with these awesome graphics. I've got it downloading on my PS5 Pro right now. I'll let you know what I think later on in the week. But yeah, the graphics upgrades that are coming to the PS5 Pro, they're increasing the amount of people who should probably take a look at this console, because I've had an excellent experience. Even with old games like Far Cry 5, which is almost 10 years old now, which is crazy, it runs better than the PS5. It eliminates literally every issue that the PS5 has with that game, and I'm sure there's plenty of other games that get the same improvement completely across the board. So if you've been holding out, you've been saving up a little bit of money, it might be time to buy a PS5 Pro, and if you really want to see what the graphics horsepower can do, maybe pick up Assassin's Creed Shadows with it. But that brings me to the third story here, which is one I'm really excited about. So there have been a lot of God of War rumors flying around lately. Of course, the last game was God of War Ragnarok. That's my favorite Sony exclusive this generation. I'm going to buy it on PC. I just needed to get farther away from it to let it kind of let myself forget it so I could go back and have it feel a little bit like a new game. But I've been kind of wondering if they're going to do what they've been doing in the past, which is like make a standalone expansion that sells as a full game. So like Spider-Man Miles Morales, for example, and it looks like that's what we're getting. So the most recent rumors is that they were working on a remastered trilogy of the original God of War games. So God of War 2, God of War 3, Chains of Olympus, and Ghosts of Sparta. And that sounded pretty cool. But it seems like they're not doing that, according to Jeff Grubb, who said that they're not actually doing a remastered trilogy, but what they are in fact doing is making a brand new game that's smaller in scale. It's like a side project set in the Greek universe, which is awesome. I don't know if it's going to be like Kratos going back to Greece when he's old, or if it's going to be a side story like Ascension set during the Greece period, but we're going to just take the gameplay from the newer God of Wars and inject it into that sort of flavor of the game. Regardless, I'm super stoked. I've been saying this for a long time, but a lot of the new games that Sony's been announcing, while they do look exciting, like Intergalactic and Ghost of Yotei, none of them are exactly what I want, which would be a new Days Gone or a new God of War. Like, those are the games I like to play. So like, I'm excited about those other games, but I'm like hyped for a new God of War. And the best part is it's supposedly coming out later this year. I don't know why Sony hasn't announced this, or if they just want it to be something that they turn around quickly to not build too much hype for it, because it is supposed to be a smaller experience. But with all that being said, I think this is going to be huge for 2025. Like 2024, definitely rough for new game releases on the PS5, unless you were playing some of the great third-party stuff out there or going back to older games that came out around when the PS5 launched. 2025 and 2026 look like they're shaping up really well well, because I couldn't ask for anything more than a Greek set God of War game. I hope they keep the brutality. I hope it's still the younger Kratos, who's a little bit crazier, a little bit more gory, a little bit angrier. Like, that's the Kratos I grew up with, and that's who I kind of want to see come back. And if they are doing the Greek area again, I could see that being the case. But yeah, we'll just have to wait and see. I hope this rumor comes true, because it almost sounds too good to be true. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, that brings me to the end of this video. A lot of exciting updates here on the channel. I don't think we're going to see PS5 games on Xbox anytime soon. I know people want it because it's Xbox making money. They get to keep 30% of those PS5 sales, but you can forget about that. I like, if I know Sony, and I've been covering Sony for a long time, like even longer than I've had this channel, they're going to figure out some way to block their games from working on whatever Xbox cooks up with the Xbox brand on it, whether it's a PC or Asus makes it or whoever. I think Sony will figure something out, and I don't think it would be that hard. Anyway, guys, that's all I've got for you in today's video. As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and shape on.